When folks let the perfectionism drop away, I've seen people go on their first date after 10 years because they've been letting their job take over their life. I've seen people let their kids snuggle in bed and read with them and stay up late instead of needing to be in bed at 7:45 even on the weekends because that's what good parents do. There's a fluidity and a joy to our lives that comes back after we let go of perfectionism. And that's where our happiness comes from.
Family, we're in for such a treat. Today's guest is Dr. Jen Douglas, and she's visiting us with so much wisdom. She's actually dropping gems all over the place for us, and I'm looking forward to you experiencing it. I just had a quick conversation with her before I bring you guys on, and I know you're going to love her as much as I do. She has over 15 years of experience in mental wellness, including 8 years at Stanford School of Medicine. She served as a clinical assistant professor there, and she's helped individuals overcome anxiety, perfectionism, and maladaptive behaviors to improve their everyday lives. You know, she's impacting the quality of lives with her teaching and with her work. And Dr. Douglas also provides education on anti burnout, assertive communication, mindfulness, and stress. Stress release yourselves now. Let's enjoy Dr. Jen Douglas. So, Dr. Jen Douglas, scrolling through social media these days, selling perfection is a big business. Perfect bodies, perfect homes, perfect lives. And then I see your Instagram bio with this, I think, refreshing message, right? I'm quoting you, okay? You say, I teach perfectionists to let go and build lives they love. You've got to share with our family how you discovered this mission of helping people break free from perfectionism. Why do we need to do it? Why did we do it? Why do we do it?
I love that. That was my favorite introduction of all time. Thank you. I, speaking from the heart, breaking people free from perfectionism is my absolute favorite thing to do. I work with so many women who've checked all of the boxes, who've done everything right, who by outside eyes look like they have the perfect life, but they're not embodied, they're not enjoying themselves. There's no spontaneity, there's no spark. They're just going through the motions that they've been told to do. And so over and over again in my practice, I saw that there were these vibrant women who just were losing themselves to anxiety, perfectionism, living in the future and not the present. And so it was a way that I could sort of speak to the masses rather than do one-on-one work. I love my one-on-one work, but you also want to share, as you know, with things like the podcast. But it's become this beautiful rubric for people who do find me on social media. And I describe myself as sort of the salmon swimming upstream against the grain of everything else we're being fed.
Well, I love that. And when we think about perfectionism, I'm going to dig in a little bit to say, and respectful to everyone's right to make decisions, not judging anything. Oftentimes, seeking perfectionism means we're seeking toward a common ideal, not an individual ideal. And I see that represented since we started out with social media as a platform where we find it being sold. And I've been to events where it's harder to tell people apart because people are looking more the same, not just in their behaviors and their clothing, but now we're doing, a lot to our physical features in makeup or, whatever. And we're all looking, you know, back in the day, there was a term Stepford wives. I don't know that
Yes.
that's a politically
Yes.
comfortable statement today, but are we in the pursuit of our individual rights to be who we are, really looking to be the same person as everyone else? Does that question make
Absolutely.
sense to you?
It makes perfect sense. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but we actually refer to it as the Instagram face. Like the
Oh,
very,
okay.
there's a term for what you're talking
I
about
didn't
where,
know that. I didn't
oh
know.
yes.
Okay.
And it's worrisome, especially when we look at younger folks who, I'm old enough that I didn't grow up with a computer in my pocket. But now people wake up and instantly they're sort of met with this onslaught of how they're supposed to look, how they're supposed to dress, how their home is supposed to be. And this is why we have 11-year-olds talking about anti-aging skincare. There's so much pressure.
This is big. I don't know if we have the right to identify it as a big problem, but the beautiful thing about you is that when people do see it impeding them living their best lives, you're able
Mhm.
to treat it for where they are experiencing it. And I know that you completed your training at UC San Diego, and then you
Yes.
and fellowship training at Stanford, right? Medical
Yes.
school. So
Yes.
you've walked through enough spaces where you've seen how the pressure for perfection can be intense. What I'd love you to share with our family right now is what those experiences revealed to you about the real cost of
Mm.
chasing perfection, not the cost of the fee you leave at the doctor's
No.
office
No.
or in the department store,
Yes.
but the real cost.
Yes, the spiritual cost, the energetic cost.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And I see this. I've lived it myself, and I see it in clients, and I see it in folks I interact with on social media all the time. We get caught into this rat race, and I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, so we're one of the hubs for this. And I've also worked at Cornell in New York City, and it's the same thing,
Mhm.
where there's all of this pressure to perform. And I work with high achievers, and you're very familiar with high achievers. And so
Mhm.
high achievers, they can play the game, they can do the work, they can perform, at 110% all of the time. The problem is that we literally spend time as the currency that we use to become perfect. Whether that's we're losing sleep at night, whether we're spending time away from our children, whether we are getting away from our hobbies or spiritual practices or what makes us us. And so, what really worries me and what really broke my heart when I was in those areas, and I worked at Stanford as a professor for I think 7 or 8 years before leaving fairly recently. And part of the reason that I decided to make that move was because I would look sort of up the food chain. And when I was looking at folks who were on my same career path but farther along, they didn't spend their time in the ways that I wanted to spend my time in my life.
Mhm. 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 That makes a lot of sense. I was reading about your work and something caught my attention, and that's this description of being a trauma informed therapist.
Yes.
Many people in our family who are listening to you right now may be hearing that term for the first time. Will you break down for us and how it shapes the way we connect with people on their healing journeys and on our healing
Absolutely.
journeys?
Absolutely. Well, people like to we're sort of fed this idea of, oh, you have a problem and you're going to work on that problem and fix that problem, and it's all sort of in the present. But many of our behaviors are informed by past experiences. I talk about perfectionism and anxiety as forms of protection that we've developed based on past experiences. So if we grew up in a chaotic household, say, a parent dealt with substance use issues, for instance, and there's a lot of chaos in the family members who are supposed to be taking care of the children and protecting the children, from the chaos of the world, those children are then sort of indoctrinated to constantly be on their best behavior, sort of be walking on eggshells around a parent who might be more volatile. And those kids are often put in the positions where, they need to bring home the A on the math test to distract from these greater stressors that their parents are under. And you often see those people grow up to be very, professionally and financially successful, but they may not be calm and at peace internally because they did not grow up in a peaceful environment.
And so that's where the trauma
Yes.
knowledge is important. Now, our mom and dad did a great job, and you may be aware that I'm one of 11
Yes.
children.
Yes, I am. It's
Our
incredible.
and we all grew up feeling as though we were only kids with great cousins living in the house. Uh, Here's the thing I want to share with you. They did a great job in my opinion, of defining, not just my opinion, because we share that opinion, the eight of us who are still alive, um, that they did a great job in distinguishing between telling us to do our best versus being the best. And I think there's something, a line between how people perceive doing their best kind of falls over into being the best. I'm the best dressed in this room, or I'm the best at, and with championship and competition and the spirit of the Olympics originally, how that feels. We celebrate people as goats. Uh, I I just wonder if maybe a pause button to examine for us where it goes over the line that becomes trauma for us. I love doing my best, and you know there are things that I do and taught my children to do that once I'm familiar with your work, I'm like, did I push them over the line?
No, I understand. Every mom, every good mom worries when they see this. But the thing is, just for any moms listening, if you're worried about it, it's probably not a problem. It's the folks who don't see it at all where it's a problem. So I'm not too worried. They're going to be spinning on perfectionism, but every behavior that we have in life is healthy in a certain dose.
Uh-huh.
So anything, working out is a very healthy, aid to mental health. But if you're spending all your time working out, you're working out for 6 hours a day and counting your macros and ignoring your family, then that's an unhealthy dose. And then we talk about disordered eating and exercise and these types of things. So perfectionism in the proper dose, high achievement, trying our best is a wonderful, wonderful thing. However, when it tips over is when we start to see it making us feel less than.
Mm-hmm.
When we're working so hard, it takes a toll on other areas of our lives. And when we find ourselves constantly caught in this sort of cycle of anxiety where even when we achieve something good, we don't celebrate it, we don't relax, we don't give ourselves a break, we don't, give our teammates a
Mm-hmm.
high five and enjoy ourselves. Our brain jumps to the next problem that we have to solve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I, I
And
I I get that, and I see that happening. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I can't imagine you as a mother weren't celebrating your kids and enjoying when they had accomplishments. So I don't worry too much about perfectionism.
Maybe that's what I do too much, right? I don't know. I'm not going to look for the TOO in this conversation, because that's kind of puts a burden and judgmental and aligns with the perfectionism of it. We could take this thing as far as we want it to go. They happen to enjoy my company, and they solicit being with me as much as we can, which is regularly. During the week we see each other a lot when I'm in California. But here's the thing I was going to go to again from personal experience, doctor. Part of that doing our best, I talked about my parents instilling in us. There's a saying that many African American people are familiar with, and non African American people who associate to it, and that is, we have to do twice as much to get half as far. And you're nodding that you're familiar with that statement. Now, I'm not saying that is the situation only for African American people. I speak about it because being one, we spoke that way. And that kind of did put something in my mindset that I had to check that everything was just right before I walked into my first boardroom, or before I went into a presentation, or before I met with people in a different country. Do you get the theme here?
Oh,
Even
absolutely. I
though
see
that
this all the
could
time.
be corrected from that early on, still
Yes.
doing it. Is it habit,
Yes.
or is there something inside that says it's still needed to me? Or can two things be true?
Two things can always be true, and there's truth in that advice. I think it would be very ignorant if anybody said, oh, black folks in the United States, women, folks from the LGBT community don't need to try harder than a
Poor
six
people from
foot
the
white
mountain.
guy to do the same thing. Exactly. It's very real. And so we don't want to invalidate that experience. The difference is you knew you had to be, your presentation had to be incredibly on point. You even had to look the part. You had to, check all the boxes twice to
I got
make
the
sure that
blonde
you
hair
would get,
now.
you got the blood, it's like a certain amount of playing the game is necessary to get a seat at the table. And we can't ignore that. The difference is I would want you and anybody else to know, people who've had that advice, people who are African American, people who are not, whomever, who feels like they have to show up in that way in the boardroom. I need to know that they leave the boardroom and they go home and they still love themselves, even if the boardroom did not give them an A plus on whatever it is that they presented. That's what I
Wow.
care about.
Wow. Wow. Where were you when I was starting my company? It'd be a lot larger now and I'd be a lot more comfortable now. Thank you. And by the way, you are right. That can be true for so many people because we work with a lot of white people who have
Mhm.
mountain life experiences or poverty experiences
Yes.
and bring some of the same fears, concerns, and negative
Yes.
images about
Yes.
themselves forward. So it's something we all
Yes.
share this, and I think all have an opportunity to learn from. And one of the things that stands out about your practice for me is how you take your approach even further, bringing in a holistic approach while
Mhm.
staying deeply inclusive. How does
Mhm.
this complete view of healing make all that difference you're creating for in the lives of people?
I appreciate that. That's very kind for you to speak so highly of it. It's it's an interesting issue in psychology right now, and this is what we used to teach in the class that I taught at Stanford. Right now, if you look at the DSM, this giant book that we have that has all of the diagnoses for psychology, there's an area in the back that's about this thick, and this is on cultural competency,
Ah,
and it's in the back, and I find that incredibly offensive. Um, we know that you are treating the whole person. You are treating not only their childhood experiences, as you referred to, getting the correct messaging that some people have to work twice as harder to get a seat at the table. But we even have data that our DNA looks different for people who have intergenerational trauma, tough immigration stories, history of racism, slavery, all these different things. And so, if we ignore those issues with a person, then you're getting this very surface level treatment or very surface level coaching that doesn't get at the root of the problem.
so you don't follow that get over it so you can come over it.
No, I do not. I do not.
Okay.
I get into it, not over it. I get into it.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that because yesterday I was sharing with someone who's going through a particularly difficult time in their lives. That number one, I'm not a professional. I can only speak
Of
from
course.
lived experiences,
Yes.
you know, um, and that I said the good thing about what's happening. One of the good things about what's happening for you right now is you're going through it. You're not trying to go around it, and it's a very difficult thing that they. Oh, you touch your heart. And and it came out kind of impulsively for me, but that is important, isn't it? We because getting trying to get around it is kind of like sweeping it under the carpet, huh? What we used to say back in the old days, we sweep it under the carpet. It just germinates, right?
Absolutely. I joke around that, I treat all of these different diagnoses and I, do this business coaching, et cetera, for folks. But what I'm doing, no matter what the problem is, what I'm actually managing is the person's avoidance.
Mm, mm, mm.
Anything. Perfectionism is just avoidance of feeling unliked, feeling unaccepted, feeling unloved. Anything that you're looking at, any behavioral problem comes down to wanting to avoid a certain feeling and not being willing to get into it and get to the root.
So let's talk a little bit more about perfectionism in this way because that thread seems woven through everything that we're discussing anyway. Some may hear perfectionism and think it's just about being organized or staying on top of everything. We've already talked about its conformity sometimes in how we look, it can be how we behave. Help us understand the different masks that perfectionism wears and how this shows up in ways that we may not really recognize. Those hidden patterns that impact our daily lives.
Yes, I'm so glad you asked because many of the stereotypes about what perfectionism looks like includes, the perfect, house where, there's not one single thing out of place, the perfect outfit, the perfect face, all these different things. And often when I work with folks and I reveal to them that I think they have a bit of perfectionism going on, they say, "Oh, I'm not perfect. I couldn't possibly be a perfectionist." When many times the people who are perfectionists actually have very messy houses, have, they get frustrated with their kids and yell sometimes. And the reason is that they're so overwhelmed by the expectation to be perfect that they actually get a little bit paralyzed and then can't move forward in the ways that would be helpful to them.
And we see that sometimes. Well, at least we saw it pre-COVID back in the day when everybody's desk was in a common zip code, and we see desks, and we think the neat desk was and the messy desk, and you're saying that messy desk could be the sign, the signal from a perfectionist as well.
Yes. Yes,
Oh,
because if someone is overwhelmed, many folks, in the business world, many folks who are perfectionists will have trouble getting started on a project. They may
mm-hmm,
procrastinate until the last minute.
mm-hmm.
They may struggle to speak up in meetings because they are going over their idea and it needs to be perfect before they say it out loud. Um, and this is a huge problem because that, again, can dovetail with identity, where the person who feels like they have to work twice as hard also feels like they have to say the perfect thing or have the perfect idea in a meeting. And then the moment passes, and then that person's talents get overlooked.
True, very true. On very many occasions that I can personally think of, and there seems to be such a strong link between perfectionism and our need for control. Is that where some of this may stem from? Whether we're
Absolutely.
trying to control ourselves, our destinies, or others.
Hmm. Well, and going back to your questions on the trauma informed piece. So many of us, if we've experienced uncertainty, if we've experienced trauma, what our brain is telling us the antidote to that is control. If we just control everything, we're never going to feel like that again. We're never going to be out of control and hurt again. But really, the antidote to trauma is trust, that we don't need to control everything and we have confidence in ourselves that we will be able to figure it out.
Mm, hmm. And so then one of the advantages of ending our dependence on perfectionism may be health, may be
Yes.
actually achieving. It can be a lot of the things that we think perfectionism is taking us toward. Actually, it's interrupting that, and now we can get there better.
Yes.
What do we lose
Yes.
by giving up perfectionism, though?
We lose, we call it reassurance seeking in psychology.
Uh-huh. I'm not
So,
familiar with that term.
yeah.
Is it literally what it's saying, or is there something deeper in it?
So when we are deep in our perfectionism, if I spend all day organizing my desk to make it
Hmm.
beautiful, but I don't actually write the email to my manager, then I'm seeking reassurance by having this perfect desk, but I'm not actually doing the work. And so if we let
What we
go of
call busy
perfectionism,
work. We say it's you're doing
yes,
busy work, you're not doing the
yes,
work.
yes, that is exactly. Perfectionists, will love to get distracted by those things. And then if you're willing to give that up and you're willing to sit in the discomfort of, oh, I'm going to say the thing at the meeting, or I'm going to send the scary email to my manager, that I've been sitting on for 3 days, then, over and over again, I have people who get promoted very, very quickly after letting go of their perfectionism. I have founders who get funded very, very quickly after getting rid of their perfectionism. And so what you're giving up is the comfort the perfectionism is giving you, but it's so worth giving up for what happens after.
Mm. You do these Instagram pages, and among all the wisdom you share, which by the way offers some wonderful daily reminders, there's one question you posted, and I think that question deserves that you explain it a little bit for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe it's
Please.
obvious, but we're not going to lean on that. And so let me get it and read it to you. Okay, would you rather be perfect, or would you rather be happy? Now, what has the transformation you witnessed then when somebody finally faces this choice?
Yes. I was wondering what you were going to say, and I'm so glad it was that one. It's so interesting because when folks let the perfectionism drop away, I've seen people go on their first date after 10 years because they've been letting their job take over their life. I've seen people let their kids snuggle in bed and read with them and stay up late instead of needing to be in bed at 7:45 even on the weekends because that's what good parents do. There's a fluidity and a joy to our lives that comes back after we let go of perfectionism. And that's where our happiness comes from.
So in the old days, we used to blame mom for everything that was wrong
Oh,
once we sat in front of a therapist, right?
yes, yes.
And now we blame the media. And I'm not saying that mom didn't play her share, and I'm not saying the media doesn't play its share. But how do we get to a place where when we're let me take media back a little bit, because everybody's talking about AI as though it's new, right?
Oh, yes,
Tech as though
yes.
it's new. Get over it, folks. The wheel was tech, right? Uh, but here's the thing I'm going with here. Believe me, it ties in a little bit. Okay. Back in the day when I was growing up, violin music plays. Back in the day when I was growing up, before we had color TV in my house, my family's home. Um, I remember seeing people who I aspired to be like. They didn't look like me, but I aspired to be like them, right? And because I had great parents, I was able to define how we can be more alike than we are different if we stop looking at what we look like and look at who we are, right? But then a TV show came on called Julia, and Diane Carroll was this spunky, smart, beautiful nurse who worked for Dr. I forget his name, but Lloyd Nolan played the character of the doctor. And they had such a great relationship. And I thought, wow, that's awesome. In just seeing them tell a story that never mentioned her race or his authority as a male or any of that, I just saw such a beautiful thing happening. And mind you, I was a kid. I also saw what looked perfect. Um, are you on, is it Don Quixote who had the quest, right?
Yes.
Are you a bit like Don Quixote in questing that are you saying kick perfectionism out, or are you saying see it for what it is?
So we're all about integrating it into our lives. So
Uh-huh.
I am absolutely on board with people having a healthy dose of perfectionism in the
Uh-huh.
right areas of their life.
Thank you, because
For
I wanted to
instance,
be Julia.
yes, you are allowed. You are allowed. You are allowed. You're allowed. So for me, the things that I care about right now most, and I'm 40, I have two babies. And so where I want to put all of my effort and where I want to look back and say, yeah, I left it all on the field. I do reading, late at night to make sure I, am doing the best that I can. That's in parenting. That's what I care about right now. Now, if I also told myself, and I've had to battle this, I've had to hold myself back because I've been in perfectionistic environments for so long. And, it's not that those were bad, they were just trying to make me the best I could be. But some of those environments would say, oh, you have to be the best mother in the world, and you have to see 30 clients a week, and you have to write a book, and you have to get a TV show, and you have to put on makeup every day and look great,
And
and
keep
you have
your
to cook every
body
meal from
tight.
scratch. Yeah, and like vacuum and pearls. And that's where we fall apart. That's where it's not okay. So
Mhm.
my message to people is pick the things that you want to put your effort in, but you also need to invite the same amount of ease on the other side to counterbalance that effort.
I so deeply appreciate that. And I'm wondering, you know, one of the ways we matriculate through education and through life, but education literally, life figuratively, is we take tests, and
Yes.
tests aren't always just a checkpoint to see where we are for readiness to progress. Sometimes it's like an admissions ticket. How does that play
Mhm.
into perfectionism in the minds of young people, and especially young
Yes.
adults who are approaching university?
Yes. Absolutely. Well, and very much, I'm glad you mentioned sort of the checklist approach, because that usually is the perfectionist rubric. I have to go to a certain college, I have to get a certain GPA, I need to get married by this time, I need to buy a house by this time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when we start to live our life as a checklist, it's very easy to get caught up in external expectations of what we need to do with our lives, rather than creating from our own sense of self the kind of life that we want to live.
Hmm. Hmm. And is Siri helping or hurting us?
It depends how we use her.
Fantastic answer. Fantastic answer.
Technology can move us towards the lives that we want, or it can move us farther away.
It's certainly been a great, not only elevator in my organization. It's just made a lot of difference for me. Where you were referencing race or gender considerations, technology goes in there, and all of a sudden they forget I'm female and black. I don't, but they do. And
But your work shows for what it is.
my work. There's a
Yeah.
Christian song that I listen to that says, "May the work that I've done speak for me." And technology does allow that a lot. So now that we've identified these deeply rooted patterns of perfectionism, Dr. Jen, let's get practical for our family living. What are some small steps in their lives they can take to start recognizing and releasing these patterns that may have been built up over time, and in particular how to recognize them, because sometimes we don't know it when we're doing it.
Absolutely. So it's all going to be about time, getting your time back, and creating safety. Those are my two tenets. That's what I want people to leave my office with. So in terms of time, just start to pay attention. If you're on page 14 of toaster ovens on Amazon and you have read 300 reviews, your life is not going to fundamentally change whether you get the 9.8 rated toaster oven or the 9.6 rated toaster oven. If you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning doing this, this is not a good use of your time. And you want to notice that it's not actually giving you the life that you want. We're very, not distractible because it's always for an end, but perfectionists can get very locked in on problems because we feel very accomplished when we solve them in a perfect way. So,
Mm.
so paying attention to when we're ruminating and putting too much effort and too much time into a small decision is what we want.
And I like you bring up. I like that you bring up search engine, because search engine optimization can be an equalizer or a killer of opportunity as well. I found some really great products out there by simply fast forwarding my way to the
Yep.
bottom and working the other
Mm-hmm.
way, and then comparing to the top two or whatever. It's a lot
Yes.
quicker, but I find really great
Yes.
product, but they just don't have the activity to have,
Yes.
and they're not using search engine optimization to create a false image of,
Yes.
I, false in quotes, of how great they are.
Yes, I think it's one of the great equalizers of social media. And one of the things that's just a great example of this is last night we just remodeled our house. I could not find my makeup. Like it literally stopped a few days ago. Could not find it. So last night at 9 o'clock at night, I said, "Oops, I'm going on this podcast. I need to grab makeup." And I went on Instagram and TikTok and asked what to do for very pale Irish Jewish skin and got some products and ordered them immediately. And then they arrived the next day. It took me 20 minutes, but our technology allows us to not spend all of our time researching and going down these rabbit holes. We can harness technology to give us time and our lives back rather than in the other direction. And that's what it sounds like you do.
And I
The
so
beautiful thing.
love that you're speaking deeper about that, because so many people are thinking it's an either or world. Either I'm too engulfed in technology, or I need to walk completely away from it. They have terminologies they
Yes.
use about, laying it down and checking out and such. And I just think that mom used to say something like moderation in all things, or
Yes. Everything in moderation, including moderation, is my favorite one.
I love
So we
that.
can
I
have
love that.
some
I
fun.
love that so much. Something else that Mama taught us, my siblings and me, is that you can learn from everyone, and certainly I'm learning from you, even if it's learning what not to do. So you're teaching us a lot. Who taught you your most unexpected life lessons? And listen, if you're
Whew.
caring to be transparent, share with us what the lesson was.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to try and find one that won't make me cry because they're all very meaningful, right?
Mm.
Um,
Crying's allowed on this
crying's
baby.
allowed. Therapists were very down with crying. So let me see. So I think my grandfather did this the best. Um, he survived the Holocaust, and my father was born in Europe after the Holocaust, and then he came here, and so I'm first gen, and so he very much had that same. You need to work twice as hard. You need to be twice as good, and it was very much this survival. Kind of, be ready for any. It's very trauma based. Like you have to be ready at any given moment for things to go wrong, as had in his life, and so he's very big on education. They can't take that away from you, etc. And at one point, I was talking to him about starting my own business, which involved moving away from academia and sort of slowly building this business. And he was worried about it. He was like, I know you can do it. I know you would be amazing, but it's really scary to go out on your own. And I said, well, but isn't that the point of all this struggle, to be able to go out on your own? And he had this incredible conversation with me where it was about, this is why we build these things. And if it crumbles, you can build it again. I was
Mm,
like,
mm, mm,
so
mm, mm. I'm
that's
just
my
pausing and
father.
showing love to him. Yeah, I'm showing love to him. The lady who lived next door to me when I lived on the beachfront, which I did for many years, was a lady named Zara Schreiber, and she had helped many people get into this country during the Holocaust. And I learned so many lessons from her. Um, and she said something that we had a different way of saying it in my family. She used to say, "See yourself through your own eyes, use other people's mirrors," right? And it when we were growing up, um, our family and people in our community would say, and because I lived in a segregated community that was racially and economically segregated, I'm talking about poor Black people, used to say, um, it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. And when she told me to see myself through my own eyes, use other people's mirror, I was like, you just made the analogy of your grandpa and, being ready for anything to happen because it can, and that's quite different than being ready for anything to happen because it likely will. That
Yes.
kind of,
Yes.
that's a whole
Very
different,
different. Trauma informed versus trauma.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
difference.
yeah,
Truly.
yeah. But, you know, it's interesting to me, and I'm just so hungry to hear your perspective on that because little pitchers do have big ears, and as we're growing up, we consume a lot more than we are able to act on as kids, but we do act them out
Yes.
as adults, don't we?
Yes. We do. And for anybody listening who's worried that they said one thing and now their child is forever on a trajectory, this way or that, what we know, and we call this a circle of safety. So what we know is that children, they have this home base, and then they go out into the world and they experience a little bit more of the world, but then they come back to the home base. And as they get older, so first they go to kindergarten, and then they eventually they're going to the movies with their friends in middle school, and then they go to college 3,000 miles away. But it's about that this home base is solid. And that's what I've absolutely read your book. Like, your parents did that. And so even in a world that was not treating you on equal footing as everybody else, you had that to come back to. And so we talk about it, I talk about it in terms of like the difference of a sapling that can get blown around
Hmm.
versus if you have a tree with a solid trunk that's not going
Hmm.
anywhere.
That makes so much sense. When you were growing up, what did people call you? How did they describe you? And honestly, has it changed as an adult? Do they still describe you the same way today? Maybe not the same people doing the describing.
Well, really, I actually am friends with all my childhood friends, which is very funny,
Yeah,
but and I'm very
I love
lucky. I
that. I
am.
love that.
I am. My best friend from when I was 5 had her first baby 2 weeks ago. Congratulations, Jackie. But when I was very young, I used to be incredibly shy, very insecure, and I think a lot of my own journey through academia and high achievement was about feeling secure, and trying to find confidence externally. All the successful women entrepreneurs know this story. Like, it's real. And and I think in some similar ways, that you're familiar to, I sort of reached this point in early adulthood in my 20s where I really made a conscious decision that I wanted to be more of an active participant and influential on my world rather than having the world happen to me. And that is
Mm.
how I behave from here on out.
Mm. Earlier this morning, I was having a conversation with someone, and I shared with them that one of the people I'd admired so much in my life and continue to was my oldest sister, Sandy. Sandy looked like everything I wanted to look like, and she did all the things I wanted to do. And her heart was so big. She's the reason. I mean, you've read my book. You don't need me to
Yes, yes.
that. And our family probably knows this already. Here's the point I'm making. I was sharing with her that I put my sister on a pedestal. And one day we were having a poignant conversation, and I teared up because she was failing my estimation of who she was.
Oh,
And
yes.
she, lovingly but definitively chastised me that I was the one who put her on that pedestal. And she said to me, if you take me off that pedestal, she said, and if you look me in the eye, you may actually like it. And I thought about that so much because looking people in the eye when I was growing up, Dr. Jen, had a lot of different meanings. When we were children, most of the adults in my community would lose their jobs or be ridiculed downtown if they looked white people in the eye. Black people didn't look white people in the eye. It was disrespectful to their authority and their elevation above you. When we were children, looking grown folks in the eye was being arrogant, being sassy. You needed to listen before you look, right? Meaning you needed to learn and earn the right to look. And then as I grew up, I learned through business and my early adulthood that not looking someone in the eye meant you were dishonest or you couldn't be, you were
Mhm.
distrusting of that person or you were hiding something completely different, opposite, intent,
Yes,
right?
yes.
When we think about perfectionism,
Mhm.
how do we learn to really look each other in the eye and be okay with who they see?
I love this question so much. Um, so I talk about this as a ladder of trust or a ladder of intimacy. So you have two people, and you can remain sort of aloof and perfect and kind of posturing in this way. And you can go about your life. And sometimes we can have that relationship with someone for 20 years, say in the office where there's never any sort of connection or vulnerability, etc. But when we want to build something with someone, when we want to be seen and we want to make someone else feel seen, we offer little bits of vulnerability or little bits of intimacy in that way. So even in this conversation, we've gone back and forth and we could have had a very surface level conversation, but instead we're talking about family. We're talking about, really important conversations that we had. We're talking about real life examples. And so as we do this, we're realizing that one another, we know because we know each other's writing that we would be a safe person. But if we were doing this on the street, what we're doing is we're actually exchanging a currency to recognize this person is a safe person who I can express myself freely about. And what your sister referred to was, you keeping her here. There wasn't that back and forth and allowing that intimacy to be built on the same level.
Mm, mm, mm. At some point, we grow up and then we do earn the right and with respect can look each other in the eye, right? It doesn't have to be a stare down.
Yes, yes. And I hope to do this with my children one day, despite me trying to have authority now. That's how these relationships can grow over time.
And what you're sharing is so important to me on a personal level, even as I engage you for the benefit and the enjoyment of our family listening right now, because I am a brand new grandma. And
Oh, congratulations!
I just love it so much. And I share, last year I didn't know if I'd be a grandma. And now I've got, through my son, uh, brand new, still smells brand new granddaughter.
Oh, oh,
Her name is Aria Carolina. And in North Carolina, we say Aria Carolina.
yeah.
Okay. And through my daughter, I have a 6 month old grandson named Jet. Don't you love that name, Jet? It's so cool. I love it so much. She couldn't think of what to name him, doctor. And when she got to the 6 month of pregnancy, we kept referring to the baby as him and him because I kept saying, don't call
Mhm.
him it. It's
Yes.
people who
Yes.
things that. That
Yes.
thing is an it and that one is a
Yeah.
in any event, my son said, well, name him for the two most important men in his life, his uncle and his dad. And so it became,
Oh.
what was it, a Bradgelina or whatever? It became Jet.
I
And
love
Brett combined equal Jet. And Jet is so adorable. So I've got Aria and I've got Jet. And I'm caring for what you're telling me so much
that.
because as how many parents through the ages have wanted to
Mhm.
give their children better than they had. And for me, it's really difficult because I truly had great parents. And I pray
Yes.
I've been a great parent to our children. How do you approach that? Do you want them to have it better or do you want them to have it? What would describe it? Better, fair, uh, teaching? What are those things?
Mhm. I want them to have what they want.
I love that. I love that. That's kind of hey, look, that because
Well, because I could define better through my eyes. I mean, my parents, my daughter of an immigrant, they wanted to be more successful, quote unquote, so more financially successful, higher in academics, get all the achievements, go to those good schools,
safe.
et cetera, safe based on safety.
Mhm.
Now we have built safety, thank goodness. And so if my child wants to go and get their MD, PhD combination, whatever from Harvard, go nuts, go for it. If my kid wants to go surfing every day and work at a coffee shop and spend their time with their friends, I hope let's go get you a cool looking surfboard.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And what we're talking about here, and perhaps it's clumsy on my part, is that perfectionism, whether we're coming at it from a sense of wanting to belong. So I'm going to wear the same eyebrows that everybody else is wearing this season because they're in fashion and not because they really look good on me.
Yes,
Or
yes.
whether we're coming at it from a point of control because I really want to rule this place. Wherever we're coming at it from, you're teaching us to come at it from a whole perspective as we heal ourselves of it. And I love that.
Yes.
Um, any more messages on perfectionism before we go 4 for 4?
Just that when we're so used to perfectionism, anything else can feel like failure.
Wow. You're dropping
Got a big
gems.
one?
Oh
Excuse
my
me.
goodness. Oh my goodness. That kind of really say it again, Doc. I'm sorry. I
sorry
just
sorry.
whoa, girl. Whoa. Okay. Say that again, please.
So when we're used to perfectionism, taking a step back from that and doing anything a little bit differently can feel like failure.
And it's not always.
No.
Thank you. Let's go 4 for 4. Okay?
Wonderful.
Dr. Jan, you get to invite any 4 people from any time in history through now to dinner. No AI people, please. Just humans,
No
no
AI.
humanoids.
No, 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 no,
No
no AI
humanoids.
people.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm good
Okay.
without AI people.
Who's at your table and why?
Um, okay. Oh my gosh. None of these people are alive. One of them is Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a Zen Buddhist master. He Yes, he's wonderful. He's contemporary of Martin Luther King. He's fantastic, and he wrote Pieces Every Step, which was the first book that I read about mindfulness and Buddhism, and just an incredible person who I never had the opportunity before he passed away in 2022 to sit in his presence, and I would like to do that. Yes, um, and the other three would be the three grandparents who I knew very well.
Oh, that is gorgeous. That is gorgeous. What y'all gonna eat?
That's a very good question. There might have to be there would have to be a division of Vietnamese food, Irish food, and Jewish food.
Well, hey, look, nobody's gonna lose with that, right?
Yeah, and I'll have some of all of it, so I'll be happy. It's a
Yeah.
great
Okay.
question.
let's go let's go 2 for 4. Okay. So, what music are you listening to these days, and why? Not podcasts, music. Okay.
Music. Okay, so I have a 6-year-old and an 8-month-old.
Uh huh.
So I'm listening to Wheels on the Bus and Raffi right now. This is not the time for the
So
cool
am
music.
I. So am I.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
wheels on
We're
the
very
bus
similar.
go round and round,
It's
round and
really, it hits. It hits.
mhm. And listen. I listen to Miss Rachel and I listen to Gracie, and so they got different beats going with
They've
those
got it
buses.
all. Yeah, this is where our music taste is these days. This
Hey,
is the
but you know
chapter we're
what?
in.
That's cool. That's cool though, because really,
It's cool. It's cool.
Miss Rachel's Wheels on the Bus sounds one way, and Gracie's sounds another way, and they're using the same notes. Isn't that cool? Isn't that
It's
cool?
very cool. It's very
Okay,
cool.
so
We're
Wheels
very
on the
cool.
Bus is one.
Hmm. We do. We have to be very careful at our house about like the curse words and the editing and things like that.
Oh my
So we're
God, you're
mostly
getting no rap now, huh? No hip hop.
we've got no, we have to listen to it at night. Like we had to listen to the new Kendrick
The
album
radio version.
like
The
after the
radio
kids went
version.
to bed. Yeah, exactly.
The
You
radio
can't find
version.
good. Yeah, it's rough.
So
It's
you
rough.
get to
So
hear Kendrick Lamar tell him, if you stop lying on me, I won't if you don't tell truth,
yeah,
stop tell lies on me, I won't tell your truths.
they're not quite ready. They're not quite ready yet. So we sneak in our after hours, but then we fall asleep immediately. So, we appreciate the Kendricks and all that. And
Uh-huh.
then for, when the kids are awake, we do a lot of like James Brown kind of Stevie Wonder stuff, just like really classic feel good kind of funk music goes well in
Yeah,
our household. Yeah.
yeah. Well, whatever you're listening to, again, 7 notes. 7 notes. We need to go back to it. All comes from 7 notes. Let's go
Yes.
3 for 4.
Okay.
What 4 books do you recommend to our family, and why?
Okay.
Not yours,
These
because we're doing that.
No.
We're
So
recommending you.
these books each changed my life, and I reread them regularly. That's how much these matter to me. So the first is the book that Thich Nhat Hanh, who I was mentioning before, wrote. It's called Peace, like peace on earth. Peace is every step. It's the most beautiful introduction to how mindfulness doesn't mean like sitting on a pillow on a mountaintop wearing Lululemon for an hour. He talks about the mindfulness of washing dishes. He talks about mindfulness in traffic. It's like how to bring this into real life so we are present in our lives and can see our lives for what they are. And it's it's a beautiful book. It's been to Vietnam and back. I will always hold on. It's tattered. It's my favorite thing in the world. Um, the one that just just swept my feet out from under me in a really beautiful way that I recommend to everyone is called 4,000 Weeks: Time Management for Mortals. And it's by Oliver Burkeman. And 4,000 weeks is roughly the time we have on Earth, the average lifespan. And I am a deep believer, and this is why I'm such a deep believer in healing perfectionism, that we have this very finite time on earth in this life, and we better get out there and use it. It doesn't mean we have to get out there and change the world or start a company and, do all these things. It can mean crocheting in your hammock in your backyard, but we've got to figure out how we want to spend our time on this earth and do that thing. So it's beautiful. It's a very humbling book. I love it very much. There's a book called Essentialism that I think is also very important for folks, in the business and entrepreneurial world, and also folks who struggle with perfectionism, because we tend to be spread very, very thin. We tend to take on too much. We tend to wear too many hats. And so it's all about focusing on what is important and what's going to move the needle forward. And taking your energy to really spring forward in your life rather than having all this fragmented energy around what isn't the most important things in your life. Love it.
And when you were talking about that book, I was thinking about the idea, which has been current for me recently,
Mm-hmm.
uh, competing toward and not competing against. And in in my industry, oftentimes we are competing toward a goal, but we have to do that by competing against other companies. And I've taught my teams, never put somebody down in your presentation. Speak from your strengths, not their weaknesses. And as you were talking about that, I don't know if that ties in, but that came to me when you were referencing that book. I think it'll be the first of your referrals that I read because I have not read it.
It's wonderful. You embody it, so I'm not worried. But it does play into that because if you're spending your time looking over at what someone else is doing,
Yeah.
that's energy you're depleting, and that's what we call cognitive set shifting, taking you away from your work and taking your energy just to look and compete when it's not necessary, and it's pulling
Mm.
you away from.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to post that as a shared comment between us. No need to compete when it's not necessary.
Yes,
Yes, girl. Yes.
this
Okay,
is
what's
how we want to live our lives. Okay, last one that I love, and it's fairly recent for me, but I have now done the audiobook and grabbed the book to make marks all over it. It's called The Mountain Is You, and it's a guide on conquering self-sabotage.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's by Brianna Weiss, and it is phenomenal, especially for folks who have not been brought up in families where they really are taught that they can do it all and they can take up space and they really can reach the level of success that say you have. It really does talk about how if what we are used to is what we're comfortable with, and so we often keep ourselves from outgrowing what we're used to. The problem is what we're used to can be very much not helping us.
And if you can talk about it for one more second, I will have buying it because I'm ordering it. I'm ordering it in hard
It's so
copy
good.
right now.
It's so good. It's
I've
so good.
changed
And
my mind. This is the first one I'm going to read.
I was telling you, I bring bangers when it comes to books. This is my favorite thing to talk about. Got them
Oh
all.
my goodness. Oh
Got
my
all the
goodness.
heavy hitters.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So look, I got it ordered. Thank you very much. Um, we can go 4 for 4 now, doctor.
Brief break. Brief Amazon break. Good. Good.
I love that. You were so cool with that too. At first, I was going to try to be like, very quietly ordering it. And then I'm like, no, no, I got to tell her I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to order this one first. So
It's
thank
great.
you.
It's
Thank
great.
you very much.
I love
Um,
it. I love it.
we are going to do 4 for 4 now. You've shared so much, and I'm sure we could curate beautiful advice from everything you've said. Will you distinctly give us 4 pieces of advice you think will be important in this moment in that we're living in for our family? And if it was advice shared to you from someone else, show homage, mention them.
Mm. Okay. 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 Um, First piece of advice is if you are used to living in survival mode, rest can feel unsafe.
Mm. Wow. Say that one again, please.
If you are used to living in survival mode, rest can feel unsafe.
That's worth 4. You got 3 more?
I do.
You
I do
dropped
all day.
gems today. You know you dropped gems today.
It's Friday. Let's go. Okay.
Oh, is it? I forgot. You're right. It is. Oh my. Okay. It is Friday. I forgot.
It is Friday. It's Friday.
Okay.
I did not forget. Okay. Um, This is an Oliver Berkman. This is born out of 10,000 Weeks. I don't know if he says this exactly, but it's
Mm-hmm.
what I take out of it at least.
Mm-hmm.
That there is no dress rehearsal for life. This is what you've got. And it's about what you want to do. It is not what you are expected to do.
Mm, mm, mm. And you kind of embodied some of that in the conversation about what you want for your children.
I do. It
Mm,
also comes from a Harvard study on aging and happiness, where the
mm.
number one regret of people at the very end of their life is that they did not live a life true to themselves. They lived a life based on what other people expected them to do.
You know, a lot of us can say that before we get to the ends of our lives, and correcting on that is kind of hard because it feels like betrayal or, not loving or appreciating. Um, we I heard them say that people at the end of their lives more regret the things they didn't do than the things they did. And I don't think that's a pass to behave and live poorly, but I do think it is a point for reflection that aligns very well with what you're teaching us now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, One on perfectionism is that I don't want anyone to feel self blame for developing perfectionism or anxiety. Perfectionism is a form of protection where we are trying to be perfect to avoid feeling rejected or unloved.
Mm, 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 mm,
And no one deserves to feel like they don't deserve to be loved unless they're perfect.
mm, mm. That's big right now. And even though it would be unfair to ask you to, go in and dissertate on that, will
Sure.
you come back and we can talk about that? Can we have a
I would
conversation
love
about
that.
love?
Yes, we can. Yes, we
Okay,
can.
then I
It's a
will
bigger
start
conversation.
inviting you. Please come back and let's talk about love.
Let's do it. Sounds great. We do it for Valentine's Day. Be great. Okay. Okay. Last one. We're on 4. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Um, so this is out informed by my training in dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, which is incredibly helpful. But then how it integrated into my own life and how I moved away from perfectionism and into where I am now. High achievers and perfectionists need to practice rest like they would practice any other skill.
Can we discuss a different one? Those two kids of mine who I told you gave me those two grandkids of mine.
Uh
Oh, I'm so fed up with them telling me that. You need to rest. You need to rest. But banner of achievement that you sleep less than 4 hours a night. And lack of
Sleep
sleep
less than
is proven to have an impact on your brain and Alzheimer's and dementia. And they're going on and on to me about, sleeping. And I said, well, all sleep ain't rest. You know, Sometimes I just
Yes.
want to rest. I don't want to sleep. I want to rest, and I
Mhm.
deflect, on them about their behavior. Say it again. I'll listen.
High achievers and perfectionists need to practice rest just like they would practice any other skill.
Dr. Jen Douglas, thank you. And from my heart to your home, oh, this has been great. Come back. Let's talk about love.
Yes, please. Thank you so much for having me.